Alright, welcome back to another Walking Dead All-Out War campaign game. Today we are going to finish up the Made to Suffer expansion. This is going to be Chapter 7, and it's called Escape from the Prison. So as we look at the board here, here's what our narrative tells us. Having been repelled once, the governor knows that the prison defenses are in disarray. He launches his final assault, unaware that Rick has already organized the evacuation of the prison. So this is going to be the biggest game of All-Out War that I've played to date. There are a total of 20 combined survivors between the two teams that we're going to control here. Looking at Rick's team, let's run through them here real quick. We're going to start out with Rick Grimes. This is the disfigured but determined version of him, and he's going to have Rick's hatchet. Billy Green is the marksman. He has the Marlin XT-17R rifle. Lori Grimes is her caring mother version, and she is wearing some body armor. Herschel Green is the prison advisor, and he's carrying a riot shield. Dr. Stevens has some bandages. Alice also has some bandages. You can't take Carl without taking his lucky hat, and he is the trainee sharpshooter version, so we went ahead and gave him a .38 revolver. Axel is going to be a beast, walking around carrying the felling axe, taking out anything that gets in his way. And then Patricia wants to hang out with Axel, and she is carrying a tire iron. Now also on Rick's team, we have some units that are going to be reinforcements. And the first time that the threat reaches medium, these three characters are going to come on from that escape edge. So they're going to come back in, try and clean house, and then give the guys coming out of the prison a way to get off the board. So we're going to bring Michonne and Tyrese with the equipment that they were carrying from our last battle report. Now, Michonne is the Vengeful Hunter, and she is wearing the riot helmet, riot gear, carrying her katana with the concealed blade. If you saw the other video, always take the concealed blade for 4 points, and she has the distract veteran skill. Tyrese also came back from that mission. He again is wearing a riot helmet, riot gear, carrying Tyrese's hammer, and carrying the small knife so we can benefit from the dual wield rule. And Andrea is the prison sniper, wearing a police vest, carrying an M4 carbine. That is Rick's team with all of their equipment. We wound up having 1 point to spare. And looking at the governor's team, all of the governor's men and women are going to start the game on the board. We're going to have Brian Blake. He is the mutilated and merciless version of himself. He is wearing riot gear and carrying a 9mm pistol. Lily is going to be a tactician, and she is armed with a 9mm pistol as well. Then we're going to throw some caution to the wind here and take some characters that we don't normally take. This mission said that we could take any surviving Woodbury characters or anyone from a neutral faction. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with some of these guys, so we're going to take them and see how they do. We're going to start with Patrick, and this is the hardened veteran version of him, and we went ahead and gave him a sledgehammer to carry around. Eugene Cooney is going to be a bruiser, and we gave him my personal favorite weapon, which is the Gator Pro, because he has the stab special rule. We can reroll all kinds of dice with that. Martinez is a marksman. He has an AK-47. He's going to be up there with Carlos on top of that billboard, who is also a marksman, and this is the hardened veteran version of Carlos, and he is going to have a Springfield M1903 rifle. Reggie is a bruiser, and he has a hatchet. And then we have Derek, who is the heartless mercenary, carrying around a claw hammer, and that is going to be the governor's team invading the prison. So as we take a look around the board here, you can see there's a gaping hole in the middle of the prison defenses here, and that's because in a previous battle report, the governor's team ran a truck and another truck and a tank through those fences. So sticking with the narrative, we're not going to put that back into play. There's just a huge hole in the fences now, giving them direct access in. There's going to be no supply tokens on the board during this game. There are 10 walkers at the start of the game, and then anytime that walkers come on to the board, they're going to come on from the governor's side. So the U-shaped side of the board back there on the governor's side behind the tank is where walkers will come in from. The tank is able to shoot again during this game, so we'll probably get one more shot out of that guy before the governor dismounts and then charges in. And the objectives for this game For Rick's side to win, we have to get at least half of his team off of the escape edge back there, and you can see where that's marked out just outside the tape line up there near the billboard. And for the governor's team to win, they have to either kill Rick or kill 50% of Rick's team. Now, if the threat tracker reaches 18 before the end of the game, then the game is going to be a draw. The threat tracker is going to start out on 4 for this game. You can see where the governor has deployed his forces at. We strategically put our marksmen up there on the billboard, and we're going to be using the no one stands alone solo rules to control those guys and equip them. For right now, if you look on Rick's side of the board, there are no survivors over there, and that is because they are all deployed inside of the prison to start the game here. So if we remove the roof, we can see inside they're all huddled in what is the infirmary down here. You can see on the other side of the infirmary door, there's a roll-up door. If they go out that door, that comes out into the prison yard. So they want to go in the prison yard, off the escape edge in order to win. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start out turn 1. The threat is going to start this game on 4, and we're going to start it with a bang. Literally, we are going to take the governor who is on top of the tank. He's going to use his one shot with that to take a shot at the prison tower, which from our previous game has 1 scenery point left over. All right, so the governor fails to roll any headshots. It sails wide left, and there's no one within 10 inches of that to move towards the blast. That is going to cause mayhem, and the rule says mayhem increases by 2, so we are now up to 6. Let's move over to Rick's team, because that uses both of the governor's activations. All right, and remember, all of Rick's team is going to be starting off inside the prison here. So we're going to start with Herschel. Herschel's going to make an 8-inch run through that doorway and out into the prison yard, bringing him just out to here. And with Herschel flying out of the prison, we're going to come back here to Martinez for the governor, who has a clear line of sight at him, right over there, and we're going to take a shot at him. All right, so after the multiple shots from Martinez, Herschel takes 2 points of damage. Because of the solo play rules that we're using, marksmen only create noise, so we move the one closest walker in towards Martinez, and he gets to avoid ammo check rolls, or else he would have been out of ammo. Back over here to Rick's team, we're going to go with Carl now and get him to make an 8-inch run out of the prison as well, bringing him right out here behind Herschel. Back here on the governor's team, we're going to stick with our marksman, and we're going to take Carlos now and get him to also take a shot at Herschel, who is down here just outside of the prison. So Carlos is also able to knock 2 points of damage off of Herschel. He has 1 wound left, and I'm not going to continue to ratchet up the threat tracker because it would get out of control way too fast. We're going to house rule it and say that it can only go up 1 time per player turn. So we've taken it up once, actually twice because of the tank, and that's all we're going to do with it this go around, at least for player actions. All right, let's keep getting these guys out of here. We're going to take Axel and 8 inches out of the prison. And story mode wise, Axel is going to start this with 1 point of health less, as well as Rick. So these guys are both starting the game with 5 wounds. Okay, and I didn't explain the rules fully for our AI characters here. Using the single player rules, marksmen have to take shots at the closest unengaged enemy survivors, which they did. Now these 3 guys right here are all bruisers. Bruisers always want to jump into melee, so these guys are going to run at the closest characters. So we're going to take these guys and go 8 inches forward, and we're going to start out with Reggie. So an 8-inch run forward for him brings in the closest walker, moving into contact with him. For Rick's side over here, we're going to have Patricia now make a beeline to get out of the prison as well. We'll take our next bruiser on the governor's side, and we'll now take Eugene and have him go 8 inches forward. He goes around to the driver's side of the truck and brings in the closest walker towards him. All right, for Rick's team, I'll tell you what, before we go ahead and move anyone, let's appreciate the terrain crate. How well does that fill out this room? We had everything that we needed to make a full-on infirmary with those hospital beds, side tables, a desk, computer, all that good stuff. Let's take Billy and get him 8 inches out of the prison. Over to here, and I'll tell you what, Billy actually has a rifle. Let's use that second action and take a shot at the governor. And between the riot gear and the governor's ridiculous defense rolls, he takes no damage from that shot. And now Patrick the Bruiser will make his 8-inch move forward, going right up there behind Reggie. I'm gonna take Alice now, and she's gonna run herself out of the prison. But before she does that, she's gonna try and use her healer ability to restore red health points to Rick and get him back to full health. Unfortunately, she has yet to master any kind of medical abilities. She rolls a blank, and Rick stays at 5 wounds. So for the governor, we have Derek and Lily left over. Now, we talked about marksmen having to shoot at survivors and bruisers wanting to get into combat. Tacticians want to win the game, so they're going to play the objective. And the objective is for Rick's team, get 50% of your survivors off of the board. It's going to be hard to get survivors off the board if the enemy is guarding that escape edge. So that's what we're going to do with them. We're going to make sneak actions starting with Derek, 4 inches over there towards the escape edge. So putting him over here gets him closer to the escape edge and doesn't put him within the kill zone of that walker. All right, so Alice couldn't heal Rick. Let's try it with Dr. Stevens, and he's going to try his medical professional ability before running out of the prison. All right, and thankfully there was an actual doctor in the house, and he was able to get Rick back up to full health. He has now joined the rest of the group outside of the prison. So all we have left over here is Lily from the governor's team. She is going to make a 4-inch sneak action as well, over there towards the escape edge. So 4 inches later, Lily's not worried about hand-to-hand combat. She's going to be within the kill zone of that single walker. Alright, so having activated all of the governor's team, we have Rick and Lori left inside of the prison here. So let's go ahead and move both of them 8 inches out of the doorway. And we wind up with this whole cluster right outside the door there. And this is the scene after all the player activations in turn 1. Let's go ahead and check some kill zones, and then we'll go and get our first event card. Alright, and after the kill zones, we now have Reggie will be fighting 2 walkers, and that walker back there moves into contact with Lily. Let's go ahead and see what our first event card is going to be. And our first event card will be Shooting at Shadows. So +1 to the threat puts us at 7, and this says all threat levels, all survivors with a nerve value lower than the current threat must shoot at the closest enemy model if they have a ranged weapon. And because we are in low threat, this isn't going to affect anyone, so we'll just increase the threat and move on. It's going to bring us to the melee phase, so we'll go ahead and increase the threat by 1 because we do have combat up to 8. And we'll start out with Lily against 1 walker. And Lily is going to lose combat and be knocked back 1 inch. She was not bitten, however, so we're just going to lose 1 point of health. And for our second combat, we are going to have Reggie taking on 2 walkers up here. So the walkers are not playing around here. Reggie loses combat, takes 2 wounds, and is bitten. And next to Reggie, the last combat that we're going to have is Eugene against 1 walker. Eugene just barely manages to knock her back 1 inch and prone. That's going to bring us to our end phase. So we have 1 prone walker and 1 bite to roll for. Let's see what happens here. And at the end of turn 1, we are going to have a couple of survivors who took some heavy damage. During turn 1, Reggie is bitten, and we are going to up the threat by 1 to 9. And be in medium threat, which means we can bring on some reinforcements as we go into turn 2. And here at the start of turn 2, the threat is going to be at 9. So like I said, we bring in all of our reinforcements. So we have Michonne, Andrea, and Tyrese all coming to the board. Rick's team has initiative, so we're going to start with Michonne, and she is going to make a run action to come up here into contact with Lily. So she runs into the front side of her, and that noise is going to pull in the closest walker. All right, Derek's not going to stand there and watch that happen to Lily, so he is going to go over and move into combat with Michonne so that he can split that off and fight her one-on-one. We're going to take Herschel and get him to continue making a beeline, trying to get off of the board with his 1 remaining wound left. So we're going to get him to make an 8-inch run forward. And that is going to pull one of those walkers in a little bit closer to him. I'm going to go over here to Martinez and get him to move up to the edge of that billboard and then rain down shots onto Andrea. So he's going to come up to here and then unload on her with some multiple shots. So Martinez is able to inflict 2 wounds onto Andrea, and we move the closest walker over to him because he's only generating noise. And not to be outdone, Andrea is going to return the favor and take a couple shots up at Martinez now. So Andrea is able to cause 7 wounds between her 2 shots, which is enough to remove Martinez from play. She does so with a headshot, and then she passes her ammo check afterwards, so she is set to go. It's going to cause mayhem and move the threat tracker up to 10. It's also going to pull some walkers in towards her as well. Then we're going to take Reggie here and have him run forward, trying to get up there in contact with Herschel. And that noise pulls in the closest walker over into contact with him. Come back over here to this group, and we're going to let's go with Alice this time around and have her go 8 inches out there close to Herschel. And that noise brings that walker in the green shirt up against the barrier. And now we'll take Patrick and get him to run 8 inches up here towards this gang of Rick's team. And as he moves up 8 inches, he's going to get that walker right behind him to follow him. And she was actually close enough to shamble right back into contact with him. Let's get some muscle to move up here near these survivors. So we'll take Axel and get him to move 8 inches forward. And that noise is going to cause the walker that was in contact with the barrier to shimmy around it and then bring him right out in front of Axel. And we'll take Eugene now and get him to run up, trying to get in contact with Axel as well. So that run forward gets him closer to Rick's group. However, he wasn't thinking in his rush, and that actually pulled the closest walker into contact with him instead of going over to fight against Axel. We'll take Tyrese back here, and before he moves over into contact with the walker in the orange jumpsuit, we're going to see if he can reduce the threat. And we rolled a 50-50 die. He successfully gets a badge. We drop the threat back down to 8, and we are again in low threat. He uses his second action to go over in contact with that walker in the jumpsuit. And we're going to have the Governor and Carlos left on the Woodbury team, so we're going to go ahead with the Governor. The Governor is a support character. Support characters typically try to buddy up with a specialized character like a marksman or a bruiser or something like that and kind of pal around with them. The Governor's not playing second fiddle to anyone. We're going to go ahead and play him as a tactician. So he's going to come down off of the tank and then try and get over there to that escape edge and shut Rick's team down. So he jumps off the tank and then runs over to help out Lily in taking on this walker. So with the threat being back in low, let's go ahead and take Dr. Stevens, who has low nerve, and get him to make a run action back up here with the rest of the group. So he goes up there to hide in the back of that pack of survivors, and luckily there are no unengaged walkers within 10 inches to move due to the noise. And that just leaves us with Carlos left from the Governor's team. So we're going to get him to make a 4-inch move forward and then take a shot at the closest survivor, which in this case is going to be Axel. All right, so from that awesome vantage point up there, Carlos is able to get 3 points of damage down onto Axel. And remember, Axel started the game 1 point down already. So he has just 2 left. And that is going to be all of the Governor's activations for his team. So we still got 5 survivors left over here on Rick's team yet to activate. And I know it seems very lopsided, but remember, we have to get 50% of them off of the board. And there's a lot of traffic between them and that escape edge. So what we're going to do is take all of those guys, again, 8-inch run action, and we'll move all at one fell swoop to try and speed this game along. All right, so now we moved everyone up there 8 inches or so. Some of them didn't make it the full distance just because the board was so congested right there. You can see the Rick is kind of tucked in the back, which isn't very characteristic of him, but in this scenario we need to keep Rick alive, and Carlos is going to keep plucking survivors, whoever is towards the front of the group, so we need to keep Rick kind of protected there, even if that means putting Lori out front. So after all of our character actions here in turn 2, you can see that this is what our board looks like. We're going to go ahead and check a couple kill zones. I don't think there's going to be very much movement at all, but we'll see what we can do, and then we'll get into our second event card. All right, so like I thought there, no movement during the event phase. Let's go ahead and see what our event card is going to be here. And we have Drawn to Chaos. So +1 to the threat takes us to 9, and we are now in medium threat. We're going to have white walkers enter play from each table edge. All right, and you can see back here on our table edges where the walkers would come into play. There's no one back there because we rolled a blank on that white, luckily. We're going to up the threat by 1 again to 10, and we're going to start the melee phase. And there's a lot of combat this time around. And we'll start out the melee phase over here with Andrea against a single walker. And she wins combat there, knocks that walker back an engine prone. And now we'll have Tyrese against a single walker. And Tyrese easily wins combat there with a headshot and removes that walker from the board. So now over here to this mess behind Uncle Rico's van. We have to split this out a couple different ways, and Rick's team has initiative, so we're gonna go and split it up like this. So now we're gonna have Michonne against Derek, and we're gonna move Lily over and have her and the governor take on a single walker. Let's go ahead and start out with that combat there. And between the two of them, all they can do is knock that walker back an inch and prone. Let's see how Michonne does against Derek. So Michonne is able to win combat there, and she inflicts 1 wound onto Derek. And now over here, we've got a bunch of the governor's team all in combat with a single walker. Let's go right down the line and start with Patrick against 1 walker. Patrick is able to remove her with a headshot. Let's go over here to Reggie against a single walker, and he just knocks her back and prone. And now we've got Eugene against a single walker over here. And Eugene is able to go ahead and remove his walker. So going into the end phase here in turn 2, we got prone walkers aplenty to roll for. And we've also got to roll for Reggie's Bite before we up the threat by 1 and go into turn 3. All right, and at the start of turn 3 here, the threat has gone up to 11. At the end of turn 2, Reggie did fail his infection roll, so he's down to just 2 wounds left over now. However, we're going to start out with Patrick, and Patrick is going to go ahead and make a run action to get into contact with Patricia. And by him doing that, it's going to create noise, and it's going to pull in the closest walker, which was right in between Reggie and Eugene. And she now moves up into contact with Alice. Over here, we're going to take Andrea, and she's going to make a 4-inch sneak action just to her left. And then she's going to take some shots at Lily. All right, so Lily is now gone from the game. Andrea was able to deal 4 wounds with her first shot. That gun has multiple shots, so she used the second one to go and take a shot at the governor, who was in Lily's kill zone. However, the governor's riot gear was able to deflect that round somehow. There's no walkers to move in from that mayhem, and we have upped the threat by 1 to 12. And while we're right here, we're just going to stick to the governor, and for his activation, he can't help himself. He's going to run into contact with Michonne. And over here, not looking to back down from a fight, Axel is going to go and charge into Eugene. Before he does that though, we're going to see if we can drop the threat. So Axel is able to reduce the threat back down to 11 and then move up there into contact with Eugene. Tyrese back there is able to run 10 inches. So he's going to run down there around Michonne and the governor and circle back into contact with Derek. And that noise is going to draw the attention of that police lady walker, and she's going to move up and bump into the front of the van. Reggie, being the bruiser that he is going to move into contact with the closest enemy survivor, which happens to be Axel. And now we're going to go back to trying to run these guys off of the board. So we're going to go ahead and start with Lori this time around and get her to make a 8-inch run action out there towards that escape edge. So she makes it just outside the prison gates there, but she is met by the police lady walker, who was pulled back off the front of the van. Carlos up there is going to slide back over to the edge of the billboard and try and rain down some shots on top of Andrea. So Carlos delivers a crushing shot down there, rolling a total of 4 hits and a headshot, but Andrea is able to roll equally well in defense, and then the police vest allows her to totally stop those rounds, and she takes no damage from that shot. And that was the last of the governor's team to activate, so we got all of Rick's group left out here. So let's start with Herschel and get him to make an 8-inch run over here, and he's actually going to move up and try and help out Lori in combat. So as Herschel moves up, yet another walker is drawn over by the noise. Let's keep this going, and we'll take Dr. Stevens and run him 8 inches forward. However, before we do that, because he has a low nerve, we're going to have to go and roll the panic die and see what actions he can take. And we roll the question mark, which gives him 1 action. So we're going to go and just, like I said, move him 8 inches forward. So Stevens makes his 8-inch run, and that walker has now moved over into contact with Herschel. We'll take Carl next, who has medium nerve, and he's going to run up 8 inches right behind his mom. All right, we're going to take Rick now, and Rick is going to, it's going to be a run action just because of the distance. No one's going to move walker-wise because of it, but he's going to move up here and jump into contact with Reggie so we can split that combat out. And with Rick up there, we're going to go and take Billy and swing him around to the side of Patricia and help her out against Patrick. After all of our player actions, this is going to be what our board looks like at kill zone phase for turn 3. You can see there's going to be no walkers to move because of the kill zones, so we're going to go straight in to our third event card. And the third event card will be Forest Walkers. So, walkers shamble out of the trees. These walkers are placed using the rules for walkers entering play, but are placed on the edge of an area of woods instead of the board edge. If there are no woods or the walkers cannot be placed, place them on the board edge as usual. Luckily, we have woods in this game. We're currently a medium threat, so we're going to place blue walkers on the outskirts of the trees. So we roll a 2, and we bring on 2 additional walkers coming out of the trees. And after going through the event phase, we're going to up the threat by 1 to 12 and go ahead and start the melee phase. We're going to start out melee back here with Tyrese against Derek. And Tyrese is going to win combat there 5 to 4, so he's going to inflict 1 point of damage onto Derek, leaving him with 3 wounds. We'll stay on this side and have Michonne taking on the Governor. And Michonne with her katana there deals a mighty 4 wounds to the Governor and drops him down to just 2 wounds remaining. And over here, we just slightly move Herschel out of contact with Lori, and we're going to have Herschel against a single walker and Lori against a single walker. Let's go ahead and start out with Herschel. And because Herschel is carrying around that riot shield, he is going to choose to defend himself, and Herschel smashes her with the shield and just shoves her back 1 inch. Now we'll have Lori against a single walker. Alright, so Lori channels some mom courage there and protects Carl by knocking that walker back 1 inch and prone. Alright, down here we got all these guys intermingled, so we're going to go and split this up. So this is fitting. We're going to have Rick against Reggie, and then Axel against Eugene. We'll start out with Rick against Reggie. Maybe Rick can get some kind of revenge for being put in the hospital way back when by Reggie. Or not. Reggie continues to own Rick and does 3 points of damage, leaving Rick with 3 wounds left. Now we're going to have Axel against Eugene. So it would have been a tie combat. Because of Eugene's dirty fighter rule, he gets to add that extra red in there, rolls a 2 and a headshot, which is enough to go ahead and remove Axel from play. So with Axel being taken out of the game here, might have to change up our strategy a bit, because we've got a lot of bad guys crashing down on some of our team back here. We're going to have Billy and Patricia taking on Patrick in this melee back here. And Patrick takes a big swing with that sledgehammer and deals 4 wounds in total. We're going to split them up evenly and take 2 on each, which is going to leave Patricia with 2 wounds and Billy with 3. We're going to finish out combat here with Alice against a single walker. And Alice is actually going to choose to defend. And Alice is able to defend herself, so we shove that walker back 1 inch. So after all of our combat there in turn 3, things aren't going so great for Rick's team. You've got a lot of bruisers coming down here to rough them up. And luckily though, we've got Tyrese and Michonne over here trying to clear a path for them. As long as Carlos isn't able to literally rain on their parade with bullets. So let's go into our end phase. We got a couple prone walkers to roll for. And we'll roll for Reggie's Bite before we get into turn 4. And here at the start of turn 4, the threat has gone up to 13, so we are right at the bottom of medium threat, about to cross the threshold into high, and Rick's team has initiative. At the end of the 3rd turn, Reggie did fail his infection bite, and he is now down to his last wound. We're going to go ahead and start out with Rick, and remember, we need to keep Rick alive, because if he dies, then this game is over and the governor wins. So we're going to take Rick, get him to try and lower the threat first, and then have him make a run action and get up there on the outside of Dr. Stevens. And Rick is able to drop the threat back down to 12. He does move up over there, pulls that walker into contact with him, and I don't mind because he should be able to take it out in melee. And staying with the action right here, we're going to take Eugene, who is going to turn around and go towards Herschel, who is probably the closest survivor to him right now. Lori over here can see the escape edge. Rick has got that walker in contact with him. The other one is prone. She's going to try and make a beeline to get off of the board. So 8 inches. Let's see how close we can get her. So she doesn't quite make it this turn. She gets kind of close, but she does draw in that walker behind her. All right, Patrick over here is going to have to move into contact with Alice because she is ever so close to him, just not touching yet. Carl over here is going to try to help out his dad, so he is going to come around and take on that walker with him. And Reggie back here is going to move up into contact with Alice as well. All right, over here with the governor, he is going to use his handgun and take a shot at Michonne before he charges her in combat. So the governor takes his shot. He is able to do 2 wounds to Michonne, leaving her with 4. The mayhem caused raises the threat up to 13 again. And just on the other side of Rico's van there, that walker has shimmied up and ran into the corner. And while we're right here, Tyrese is going to move over into contact with the governor after he tries to reduce the threat. All right, so we're doing pretty well with these threat reducing rolls, and we drop it back down to 12 again before he moves over there. Up there from the billboard, Carlos is going to shoot down onto Andrea. So death from above. Carlos is able to throw out enough wounds to remove Andrea from the board. And he does it with a headshot, so she does not come back as a walker. There's no mayhem that's going to go up. That was a rough one for Rick's team. She was going to be a big contributor to helping them get out of here. Alright, so that one hurt. I'm trying to figure out what to do here now after losing Andrea. Something's got to be done about Carlos up there. So we're going to take Billy, get Billy to try and get off the board by running 8 inches over there towards that group. But then Billy's going to use his rifle to see if he can't take a shot at Carlos and at least do some damage to him in this turn. Alright, so Billy gets a shot off. He does 4 wounds to Carlos, taking him down to his last wound. But in doing that, he runs out of ammo. So Billy's carrying around the paperweight with him now. The mayhem causes the threat to go up to 13. That did, however, draw in the closest walker, who moved over into contact with Reggie. So at least Alice doesn't have to fight both of them now. Derek back here again is just going to go over and try and bust up this 2-on-1 that Tyrese and Michonne have going on with the governor, and he's going to engage Tyrese. So that's going to leave us with Patricia and Dr. Stevens left to activate on Rick's team, both of which have low nerve, so we got to do panic checks for them. Let's start out here with Patricia. Patricia is only allowed to do 1 silent action according to the panic die, so she says, "Sorry about your luck, Alice. I got to get off the board." She's going to make a 4-inch sneak action up there towards the escape edge. And now we're with Dr. Stevens. Same thing for him. We'll roll the panic die, and then we'll see what kind of actions we can take. And Dr. Stevens rolls the question mark, which gives him 1 action. So he takes full advantage of it, makes a run move, goes between Carl and Herschel over here, and draws in the walker off the corner of the van. Here's the board after all of our player actions in turn 4. It's getting kind of interesting. Rick's team has dropped 2 people so far, so we got to get these folks off the board in a hurry here. Let's go into some kill zones and see if anyone's going to move, and then we'll get our event card. All right, and our event card for turn 4 will be focus. There we go. The Walking Dead, +2 to the threat, puts at 15 in high threat. As above, in addition, all prone walkers immediately stand up. So what that says is double blue walkers are in interplay and move towards the nearest survivor. Okay, so back here we have our edges where the walkers will spawn from, and we put 1 on each table edge in the middle. So we put the guy in the red shirt there, the topless guy along the back edge. And over there we put Walker Shane in the middle and move in towards the closest survivor, brought him into contact with the governor. All right, we're gonna up the threat by 1 again to 16 now, well into high threat. And we're gonna go into the melee phase. So we'll start out back here with Alice against Patrick. So I don't know how she did it. Alice decided to defend herself in combat against a sledgehammer and manages to do so, taking no damage. Let's take Reggie against a single walker now. And Reggie is able to go and remove her from play. Let's see over here if Herschel can survive the attack from Eugene. And thanks to some absolutely horrible rolling by Eugene, even with the rerolls because of stab, Herschel takes no damage and they tie combat. Let's have Rick and Carl against the walker right next to Herschel. So Rick and Carl roll enough wounds there, and because of Rick's police brutality special roll, he gets a free headshot, and we remove that walker from play. All right, Dr. Stevens is going to see if he can defend himself from this walker here, because he has no attack value. So we got a whole lot of miss there, and they just separate from each other very uneventfully. All right, over here we break this combat up again, and one more time we're gonna have Derek against Tyrese, and Michonne against the governor. Michonne does have a walker helping her out this time around, but we're gonna start out with Derek and Tyrese. So Tyrese deals out 5 wounds to Derek in total, and is able to remove him from the game. And we'll finish out this melee phase with Michonne and 1 walker against the governor. The unicorn on that van is hilarious. Anyway, Michonne and the walker deal enough damage to go and take the governor out by putting up 5 total wounds. They don't get a headshot though, so the governor is going to come back as a prone armored walker because of the riot gear. And after melee, this is what our board looks like now. Turn 4 was nuts between the event card and all that melee. I don't know if we're going to be able to get these guys off the board. We're going to up the threat by 1 to 17 and go into turn 5. And as we start what will probably be our last turn, we're in turn 5. The threat is all the way up to 17, and Reggie did not take another wound from that infection, so he's still holding strong here. Governor has initiative to go around, so we're going to start out with Eugene, and Eugene is just going to move forward right into Herschel again. And over here for Rick's team, we need to get Lori off the board edge. We need to lower the threat too. But before we can try to do anything, Lori has medium nerve, so we have to roll a panic dice and see what happens here. Lori rolls the whispering or quiet face on the panic die, which means she can make 1 silent action. So we're not going to waste it trying to lower the threat. Lori's going to go and make a 4-inch sneak action and take herself off of the board. And over here with the governor, we have to go ahead and take these bruisers, run them into combat with the character. So Reggie is just going to crash into Alice here. Over here for Dr. Stevens, we're going to see if we can get him to get off of the board as well. But again, we have to roll a panic die for him. So let's go ahead and do that. Dr. Stevens also rolls the quiet face so he can make 1 silent action. That 4 inches just isn't enough to get him off of the board edge there. So he's going to have to park himself right there at the escape edge. Patrick is also going to take himself and run into Alice as well and see if they can double team her off of the board. All right, so Carl back here has medium nerve. He has 8 inches of movement that will get him just off of the board edge. I mean, just off of there. But we have to roll the panic die first to see what he can do. Rick has a rallying cry leader ability that says if we don't like the first result, we can roll it again, but we're stuck with whatever the second result is. So we roll the question mark with our first roll of the panic die, and we're going to go and take that result. Carl can make his 8-inch run move off of the board. It's going to create noise and draw that walker right over to the board edge where Carl just ran off of. All we've got left from the governor's team is Carlos sitting up there on that billboard still. He's going to take a shot down on top of Michonne and see what he can do to her. And if you're wondering why we're not rolling panic checks for any of the governor's team, the majority of which all have medium nerve, it's because the no one stands alone rules say that we don't have to. The same reason they don't have to take ammo checks if they're a marksman or whatever other crazy rules that they came up with. These guys don't suffer from panic rolls either. So let's see how many wounds he can inflict on Michonne. So Carlos is able to do 2 wounds to Michonne. That brings her down to 2 wounds. And the noise generated brings the closest walker in, so we just bump him into the bottom of the billboard there. Rick back here is in the same boat as Dr. Stevens, where he can get just to the edge of the board, but not quite enough to get off of there. So we're going to take Rick's first action and see if he can reduce the threat. Maybe we can swing another turn and get some folks off. If not, we're going to be playing for a draw, it looks like. So first action will be to try and drop the threat. Second action, he's going to run right out there to the escape edge. The threat stays where it is at 17. Rick makes his way up there, and we pull in the closest walker to him. We've taken all the actions with the governor's team, so we got a few folks left over here to activate still. Let's take Michonne. We're going to try to get her to drop the threat, and after that, she's going to make a sneak action over there to get next to Rick, and hopefully live long enough to get off the board edge in the next turn. Alright, so thankfully she is able to lower the threat. It comes back down to 16, and she takes her spot over there. We're going to try and do the same thing with Tyrese. Tyrese is going to try and lower the threat, and then 4-inch sneak action over there towards the rest of the group. So Tyrese tries, but he can't get that threat to come down any lower. It's going to stay at 16. He does, however, go over there. So if we do make to the next turn, we're poised to get a bunch of people out of the board. And then over here we have Billy with his empty gun and Patricia still to activate. We'll start out with Billy. He has medium nerve, so we will roll the panic die. All right, well that didn't help at all. Billy rolls the panic face and screams, drives the threat up by 1 to 17, and pulls in the closest walker to him. Let's see what Patricia can do. She has low nerve, so we'll roll the panic die for her, and hopefully she'll be able to try and drop the threat again. And thankfully, Patricia rolls the question mark, allowing her to take 1 action. She uses that action to try and reduce the threat, rolls a badge on the 50-50 die, drops it back down to 16. After all of our player actions for turn 5, this is what our board looks like. We've got enough characters close to the edge to almost have us win the game outright, and then we've got a few characters down here. Probably aren't going to fare so well in melee combat. We're going to check out some kill zones and then go into the 5th event card. All right, so a couple walkers move from kill zones. We got Herschel taking on an additional person now and that walker, and Tyrese will be fighting against Walker Shane back there. Let's go and see what our next event card will be. Sniper. And this is a new one. I had to read over this for a minute there. So we're going to add red to the threat. And then the player with initiative, which is the governor here appropriately, is going to pick a spot on his deployment edge, so somewhere along the back table edge back there behind the tank. We're going to shoot at someone from 30 inches away, and it's going to be double white. Alright, so this is about as close as I can get the camera to the back edge of this board and still be able to see anything. So we're going to say the shot comes from back here, and we're going to take a free shot at Patricia. Luckily, we rolled a blank on the red die, so we add nothing to the threat tracker. That's going to stay at 16, but let's see what this shot does to Patricia. So Patricia is still there. She's very scared now and shaken, however, does cause 1 point of damage. She has 1 wound left. We rolled and it was going to make noise. Didn't matter because there are no walkers in that corner of the board. So what we're going to do now is up the threat by 1 to 17. And we're going to go into the melee combat phase. And while we're looking at it right here, we'll start out with Reggie and Patrick against Alice. And these guys finally managed to kill off Alice. She comes back as a prone walker because they didn't get the headshot. And over here now, we're going to have Herschel against Eugene and a single walker. And that was just way too many wounds for Herschel to try and fend off, even with the riot shield. So Herschel is removed from play. They do roll the headshot, and you see Billy there in the background just watches as his dad gets beaten to the ground. We got Rick back here against a single walker right at the escape edge. So Rick wins combat, and again, that police brutality rule comes in, and he gets the extra headshot added in for free, and we are removing that walker from play. And in our last melee combat here, we're gonna have Tyrese taking on Walker Shane. So Tyrese deals out plenty of wounds, but it doesn't matter, because he doesn't get the headshot. We just knock him back an inch and prone. At the end of turn 5, this is what our board looks like. We got a couple of survivors ready to run off of the board edge back there. In fact, that will be enough to get us 6 off, and that would give Rick the win. However, you can see that the threat tracker is at 17, and because we're doing solo play, at the end of the turn, we have to up it by 1 to 18, which means that this game is going to be a draw.